Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my LinkedIn Lives. I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified wellbeing expert, working with educational institutions and companies, helping them support their family wellbeing challenges. As you know, every week I interview different experts who make a difference. And today I'm very happy to welcome back Ivana. Hi, Ivana. How are you doing?
Hello. Very good. Beautiful day here in Croatia, Zagreb. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and thank you for asking that. So I'm a clinical psychologist and psychotherapist. I predominantly work with expat population. So that is also explanation partially. Our topic of today is linked with that.
Amazing. Really looking forward to it. We've had questions again because I think, especially being in Dubai, this topic is a really hot topic. So you chose repatriation stress one step at a time. Can you tell us what made you choose that and tell us about it? Yeah.
Well, I would say initial motivation was probably a bit selfish because I'm going through repatriation stress and reverse culture shock myself.
Wow.
I moved back to Croatia 6 months ago. So I would say that different phases that I'm going through is kind of a lived experience also that I'm kind of building up and trying to support my clients better, knowing what they're going through and trying to reverse engineer it and find things that work and how to kind of manage and mitigate acculturation stress that is quite frequent. And as you said, in Middle East, it's frequently revolving doors. So people would kind of get in and out of contracts that last for 2 or 3 years and then move away, especially if working in international companies. So I think it's very frequent and very up to date. Yeah.
And I don't think you're selfish at all. I think it's probably even more authentic and beneficial because you're actually living the experience yourself. So I think that's the best. I think you can give the best advice and the best tips and tricks when you're living through something yourself. So I think it's brilliant that you chose this topic. Right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes.
I'm hoping that is that, if it makes sense, because it is easier to kind of attune how it is sitting on the opposite side, going through the same thing. So I would hope that it helps. Yeah.
Exactly. So can you tell us, like from the beginning, like where do we start? Like how does this all start? Where's the best place to start this for you?
Well, what I noticed, and not many people would kind of expect for repatriation to be stressful. So they would expect to kind of moving and then kind of relocating to be challenging feat, but they don't anticipate, returning, repatriating, or relocating to be as stressful. And at the same time, I don't think the communities that you're kind of getting back to in your home country, they don't anticipate that, if it makes sense. So if anything, you have more need, less support. And it surprises you as well. So it is a kind of double whammy, where people are kind of late in the game. Ideally, you would start to prepare earlier on before you relocate.
Just to stop you there, sorry. Can you explain exactly what it is? Just so that I guess that's the first step, just to make sure that everybody understands. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So repatriation stress is not always, but predominantly linked with, let's say, reverse culture shock. So that would mean changes that you would experience in your identity, in your work role, is how you feel, how, let's say, comfortable you feel in different cultural contexts while returning back home. What makes it maybe more difficult is the longer that you spend time abroad, the bigger the difference between your home country and the country that you relocated from. If it's your first repatriation ride, it can put you in more danger, if it makes sense, that put you more in risk health-wise. If you don't keep close relations with your home countries, so you feel kind of new that the country changed, you changed, and it feels like you're not a good fit anymore, if it makes sense. That's makes it a bit more challenging. Obviously, the duration and cultural differences also kind of play a role.
Sure.
So the longer you're abroad and the larger the difference is, it will be kind of maybe more complex to navigate. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so you've said a lot of things there. So there's a lot to unpack, but we'll try and keep it. Of course, I would love to talk to you longer, but because we've only got 25 minutes, I want to keep it as simple as possible so people can really get some information from it and some takeaway tips, because I know you're so knowledgeable with many topics. So, okay, so let's, right, okay,
Sorry.
so you said...
I'm a bit a nerdy therapist, so sometimes it's difficult to help myself with that. So I'll pace myself.
No, that's okay. Yeah, we'll just keep it simple, because then if somebody's just listening for 5 minutes, they can get something. So, okay, so basically you were living away. How long were you in Doha for?
7 years. Yeah.
7 years. Wow. So you moved away for 7 years. Okay, and I guess you had your own challenges moving. So what happened then when you decided you wanted to return home to your home country, Croatia? Tell us what happened there and the process, and what's helped you, like challenges you've had and what's helped you.
Yeah, well, definitely what happens, and it happens automatically because the context, the backdrop changes, with routines, norms, you feel comfortable where the place you live, if it makes sense. And then it changes. And willingly, not willingly, you would automatically kind of compare. And that's not something that you can stop, but it kind of takes the bandwidth from you, from, let's say, integrating properly, adjusting. Yeah. So you would feel more exhausted emotionally, cognitively, if it makes sense. You would maybe get a bit of a, let's say, identity crisis in terms of like who I am now when I'm not an expat anymore, but also you don't feel completely kind of like you fit. It's like a shoe that changed a bit and you changed a bit. So it feels uncomfortable to some extent of time, returning to the kind of old context. So that's something that kind of an identity shift happens. And also obviously integrating in other life roles, for example, work role. And that's something that it seems to me also expats frequently notice, that there's a lack of strategic plan, what to do with their careers when they're back. And it's hard to integrate in their former teams, for example, if they work internationally. So there's different identity shifts, like work shifts, and obviously change of pace and the way you're living, basically. So it kind of reduces the bandwidth because you need to kind of adapt more on different areas. Yeah, like putting out fires in different aspects of your life. And that's a portion of my experience, but obviously for some people is more difficult. Maybe in my situation, the cultural difference did that in terms of Croatian culture, obviously, and MENA culture and Qatar, and specifically kind of changed a bit. 7 years is a long way to go. So yeah, there's some kind of risk factors there. At the same time, what helped is openness, connecting with.
We'll talk about the solutions after, if you don't mind. To say risk factors. So what are the risk factors?
If it's your first repatriation experience, definitely that's something to be mindful about. The cultural difference, the time spent abroad, the connection that you have with your home country, the better it is. It will be easier to reintegrate. If your roots are kind of rather linked with the host country, you would have more difficulties. If you have good support system back home, that will facilitate the change. If there's a kind of a plan, like organizational plan, in terms of how to navigate your career switch, if it makes sense, either let's say peer support or mentor back home, to kind of feel more at ease in your new role when you're back home. For me, that didn't play a big role because I returned to my private practice. But for internationals that work abroad in international companies, if they're returning to headquarters, ideally they would have a good plan how to integrate them professionally.
Okay. I've just got a question here from Sarah. She says, why does the coming home phase often feel harder than moving abroad in the first place?
Yeah, definitely speaking the truth to my experience as well. I would say that there is a bit linked with stressors and life changes. When it's not, completely what doesn't kill you make you stronger. There's a fine, let's say, amount of changes and challenges that kind of build your, character, stamina, skills, whatever you kind of imagine happening,
Yeah.
But at some point, it can be a bit too much. So you would feel good with first change, second change, and then third one will break you if it makes sense. So it might be that your psychological immune system dropped a bit. If you're returning with, let's say, pre-existing conditions, health-wise, mental health-wise, strained family relationships, they would kind of draw from these resources that you had, but you don't have now, for example. So in that extent, you can be kind of more vulnerable upon return than kind of going away, or going abroad.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that. So you mentioned, I guess it always can depend as well as how much time you have before you actually go back home. So if you plan it and how much time. So how did you? So obviously you probably were aware that this was going to be stressful, yeah, or not?
Yes, I just the extensivity of it, I wasn't anticipating very well. Yeah.
Oh, really? Tell us about that. What you anticipated and how you prepared and what happened.
Looking back, I would be smarter next time because, as I said, because you're adjusting in different life areas. For example, psychologically, cognitively, culturally, as a worker or entrepreneur. So if you can put on break or on pause any of these roles, while you navigate the logistics of repatriation, that would be ideal if it makes sense. Looking back, I would now maybe kind of get back to my private practice maybe a bit later in the day, not on the first month,
Really?
maybe not even on the second month. I would give myself a breather space to kind of to get some roots and center myself before I switch to changing this role as well, if it makes sense.
Yeah,
If it's
too many things.
happening all at once, it can be challenging. And although I was kind of happy and had this sensation like that I need to jump back, and that will kind of make it easier on me, it did the opposite. Yeah, if you have that luxury and if you have that chance to maybe take a longer break in between jobs and things like that, something that can be manageable, obviously as a family or as a practitioner, I would warmly recommend that. Not to have a transfer in all life roles at one time, at one point.
That's true. It's a lot. Because then you're just going to be physically and mentally and emotionally challenged. Yeah, that does. So how did you manage that then? Because I guess, and when did you realize, hang on a minute, I think I've done too much here?
In the first instance, because I'm quite stubborn and driven, I was like, no, that's okay. It's just kind of little bumps in the road. But I noticed that I needed prolonged periods of time to do something that I would have done very quickly before.
Oh, really?
And I noticed that my, kind of executive skills are are not in ideal phase. So then I noticed it's not about me not being driven and more motivated. It's just me being drained and exhausted to the extent that then the things that I enjoy start to suffer. So I reduced the number of the clients, changed the pace in a sense. That I took on a coach link that kind of about career transition and changes. That's very helpful and was informative and also learning curve experience. I engaged with expatriate community here in Croatia because you can connect similar experiences and gain very practical kind of tools and skills.
Oh, brilliant.
And you still feel rooted in this kind of a hybrid identity, like me as a Croatian, but also me as a migrant, if it makes sense. And it kind of helps you to get the best of both worlds and to validate the idea that you don't need to choose, that having, multiple identities and feeling both as migrant and national is okay and can coexist. And definitely trying to enjoy kind of a finer things in life that came with the move, let's say continental climate, being in contact with nature more, to kind of to try to be mindful about things that I'm grateful upon return. That kind of facilitate the change. So these are the things that I kind of try to implement to make it an easier and seamless transition. But I wasn't smart about it in the first couple of months. But I'm glad that I kind of took a step back.
It seems like you handled it. You acknowledged it quite quickly and changed the situation quickly.
It's weird. It's like going for a roller coaster ride. Like you think you know what to expect, and you brace yourself, and it's like, ooh, it's even more intensive. But yes, I think taking a step back, and when you notice that you're struggling, that you're not able to keep up, let's say, with the ways that you used to do work, or enjoys things that are previously were enjoyable, that this is a kind of a good kind of feedback loop. Like, now is the time to stop back and then reassess and then proceed mindfully, because pushing for it will kind of just increase the load, and if anything, it will be harder for you to get back to it in a healthy, adaptive way.
True. So you mentioned that you basically slowed down. Sounds like you reduced your clients. Was there any other self-care strategies that you found effective during this time?
Definitely community that can kind of validate what you're going through, that is not kind of questioning how hard it can be, because sometimes expat life seems as a life of privilege, and to some extent it is. So socially, sometimes it feels like, okay, like first world problems in a way. So having people around you that are open, good natured, but also kind of gently confronting in an adaptive way, it is helpful. So you kind of feel validated, but also kind of like turn to what I can do to kind of recover and take care of myself well. Definitely, keeping a good routines that kind of keep you grounded in terms of, taking care of the way you eat, your sleeping patterns, level of physical activity. It's like a kind of hooks on a wall to build your life around, if it makes sense. They give you structure and then reduce the load, so you're able to kind of function more seamlessly, and finding a good balance, because at the beginning, everything would kind of feel a bit hard or unnatural, or you wouldn't be so enjoyable. So it's hitting the right balance while you're going through it is a tricky thing. But being patient, definitely, and being self-compassionate. And what helped me as well is staying in touch with people from my community back in Qatar, if it makes sense.
Oh, really?
Because most of them, they're serial expats, so they would have like, yeah, it sounds about right. Like validating the phase that you're in, because you think like it should be easier, you shouldn't. And they would say like, yeah, no, that this is the way it is. Like, embrace the suck, ride the wave, and they would kind of validate the idea that it is not that you're doing it wrong. It is just the experience is challenging per se. And with time, it gets better, and you get to enjoy kind of both worlds.
No, definitely. It sounds like you've done a lot of things then to actually help yourself. So you changed your routine, you gave yourself self-care, and you said the power of a community as well. You reached out to the expat community, plus being validated. So there's quite a lot of things there, really, which are really useful points, which, maybe, because obviously you yourself are a therapist as well. But for other people, they might not even think about all of those things. Yeah, they might just really be, like you said, the first instinct was to feel hard on yourself and I'm doing something wrong. But
yeah, no. Even for myself, I was naive of accepting, like, in terms of like, I can do it, like, easily, no biggie. I survived the move. Relocation should be easier. Sometimes it is not. What specifically gave me purpose, for example, now when I'm thinking about it, following things that are aligned with values, things that are kind of a deep interest of yours.
Say that again, sorry.
Values, kind of doing things that are with what you feel passionate about. For example, having this kind of conversation is very meaningful to me. If somebody who goes through something similar or plans to go to something similar can draw from my experience. So this idea, and partially, you're also part of my repatriation journey and how to navigate in the best way. And this is also kind of a community building and sharing in terms of capacities and exchanging, values and warmth. So thank you for this.
Amazing. No, thank you so much, Ivana. So what would you say then for people watching now who are just about to return home? I know you have mentioned it, but in, say, a few key points, what would you say are the most important things, like bullet points, takeaways that they can think about?
Yeah. Be picky about the level, intensity, and sources of information of what to expect from home. Make sure that you have a good support system returning, but also wherever you're kind of leaving, the place that you're leaving, to stay in contact with that community as well. You don't need to give up anything. You can kind of just switch what maybe the basic priority is just now. Work on this kind of preventive stress management in terms of like intake of food, physical activity, level of activities, and be very realistic about what to expect, because on the first blow it will be very draining. So be measured, be realistic on a personal level. On let's say kind of a community level, expatriate communities back home, they can be a source of support because they've already done it. They know the feel of it. Giving yourself time in different life roles. If you can kind of put something on break while you recuperate, and kind of you don't need to hit the ground running because it will drain you. So be kind and self-compassionate. So maybe these 3 things. Yeah.
Amazing. And just one last question. How can we reframe this as being not just a stressful transition, but also an opportunity for growth? That question just came in.
Yeah. In terms of how we look at stress, there's a pivot here, in terms of the way you interpret the challenge, the distress, can affect like literally how your body responds to it.
So true.
Kind of thinking about it as a new challenge or a learning opportunity while being kind to yourself while you navigate it is ideal combination. So the idea is not to gaslight yourself into this is not stressful, I'm okay. It is more like, okay, yeah, definitely challenging, and how to hit the sweet spot. So it's kind of a learning curve, but also enriching, if it makes sense. It's not something that will be awful and end up awful, but also to be objective around it, that it is a big life stressor, to kind of being kind and motivated.
Amazing. No, thanks, Ivana. And what have you learned about all of this, do you think?
That I need to be more watchful when I need to slow things down. As you said, like I reacted rather quickly, but also not quickly enough. I would, definitely would have easier transition if I went a bit kind of smarter and slower, and took a mindful stance entering into repatriation phase. Yeah.
Amazing. And is there anything else you would like to say to our viewers about this that you haven't mentioned?
I'm so glad and pleased to be able to talk about this part of the expat life cycle. I think it's meaningful to be here, and I thank you for your company and the questions. And I just hope whoever is going through this phase, that is going to kind of benefit from the things that we've changed.
Oh, definitely. No, thanks, Ivana. And how is life for you now in Croatia and your stress levels?
Really good. So live concert started. The weather is beautiful, so it is much easier to enjoy Croatia at this time.
Amazing, amazing. I would love to visit. But no, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. I think it's very, you've shared some really useful tips and tricks, because so many people are going through this now, and maybe, if they're not sure of what to do, it can just be so much harder and so much more stressful, because like you say, how we react to things, how we interpret stress, everything is also valid, basically, and how we can manage the situation and not become burnt out or depressed. So, because they say moving house is the most stressful thing, so moving countries is just a whole nother level, isn't it? But no, thank you so much, Ivana, and thank you everybody for your comments and questions. If you have any more comments and questions about this, please feel free to message Ivana directly or put a comment or question on the post, and we will get back to you. But thank you so much, Ivana. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for hospitality, and I'm enjoying this as well. So thank you.
Amazing, and thank you everybody, and I'll see you next week.
See you.